Hey, bookworms. Ever feel like the Indian caste system is portrayed kind of one-dimensionally online?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, get ready to have your assumptions challenged.
I like it.
Today we're diving into Varna Jati Caste, a primer on Indian social structures.
Okay.
This book takes us beyond those oversimplifications and kind of encourages us to look at things from a fresh perspective.
It's really fascinating how this book tries to bridge the understanding between, the East and West.
Yeah.
It tackles those misconceptions head on that have become so common in Western media.
Exactly. It's like the author took all those confusing and often misleading narratives and said, hold on, let's unpack this properly.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do today, right?
Yeah.
Decode these insights in a way that makes sense for everyone, especially for our Western audience.
Absolutely, because reducing such a rich and diverse civilization to just its problems doesn't really paint the full picture.
Yeah.
It's like trying to understand a symphony by only listening to one instrument.
Perfect analogy. So the book kicks off with this fundamental concepts in Vedic thought, the idea of two realms of existence.
Right. Talks about Vyavaharika.
Okay.
Which is the material world we experience every day, our jobs, relationships, that pizza we had last night.
Yeah.
And then there's Paramarthika.
Okay.
A state of being that goes beyond our senses, a transcendental realm.
Okay, I'm already feeling like I need a cheat sheet.
Sure.
Can you break that down for us non-philosophy majors?
Think of it like this.
Okay.
Vyavaharika is like the matrix,
right.
The everyday world we see and interact with. Paramarthika is like taking the red pill.
Got it.
And seeing reality as it truly is, beyond the illusions.
Okay, that definitely helps. So how does this connect to the caste system, or what the book refers to as Varna?
Well, that's where the 4 goals of human life in Vedic thought come in.
Okay.
Artha, which is about material well-being and security.
Mm-hmm.
Kama, which is the pursuit of desires and enjoyment. Dharma, which is about righteous action and fulfilling one's duty. And finally, moksha, which is liberation from the cycle of birth and death.
So is the book suggesting that the Varna system was designed to help people achieve these goals, regardless of background?
That's exactly what's so intriguing. It argues that the system was about recognizing that everyone has different strengths and tendencies, and that a well-functioning society needs all these different roles and contributions working together harmoniously.
Okay, that's definitely different from what we usually hear. So how did this idea of Varna, which is based on occupation, become the rigid birth-based caste system we see criticized today?
Well, the book really challenges that common narrative.
Okay.
It suggests that Varna was initially about optimizing individual and collective contributions, kind of like the specialization we see in different professions today. But over time, it got rigidified into what we know as Jati.
So Jati is more like subgroups within those broader Varnas.
Precisely. Imagine them as kinship groups, often with shared occupations. But then you have historical events like the economic hardship during Muslim rule.
Okay.
And the formalization imposed by the British during colonization, which really cemented things into the caste system as we know it today.
So are we saying that the caste system, as it's often portrayed, is partly a product of colonialism?
It seems that the book leans in that direction.
Okay.
It emphasizes how the term caste itself is a Western imposition, carrying baggage that doesn't fully capture the nuances of the original system.
Wow. That's quite a revelation. So what about the concept of untouchability? Was that always part of the system?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The book actually challenges the entire category of untouchability.
Okay.
It argues that this was largely an artificial construct imposed by the British.
Wait, so you're saying that this idea of untouchables wasn't a central part of the original Vedic framework?
That's the argument the book puts forward. It suggests that the untouchability label masks the diverse experiences of various communities who were historically grouped together.
It's almost like they created a problem by trying to oversimplify a complex reality.
Right. And this simplification often leads to a distorted understanding of what was actually going on.
Okay.
The book points out that this imposed category creates a false victim-oppressor dichotomy, which can actually hinder meaningful social progress.
So to truly understand the complexities of Indian society, we need to move beyond those oversimplified labels.
Absolutely. And this book encourages us to do just that.
Okay.
It takes us on this fascinating historical journey, showing how these social structures evolved.
Yeah, I'm ready for that journey.
Okay.
Let's go back to the beginning. What was life like in the early Vedic period?
Well, the book paints a picture of a surprisingly egalitarian society. Imagine women and Shudras composing hymns alongside Brahmins. No rigid caste system in sight.
Wow, that's not the image we usually get.
Right. But that's what makes this book so captivating.
Yeah.
It reveals these aha moments that challenge our preconceived notions. It shows how Varna emerged as a way to organize society and optimize contributions. But it wasn't about birth-based hierarchy.
Okay. So when did things start to shift?
It seems like in the later Vedic period, those kinship and occupational groups known as jati became more prominent. They were still somewhat fluid, not strictly based on birth, but you can see the beginnings of a more solidified system.
And then, as we discussed earlier, the Muslim rule further rigidified the system, followed by that British formalization of caste during colonization.
Exactly. It's crucial to understand that it wasn't some pre-planned system designed to create inequality.
Right.
It was a complex interplay of social, economic, and political forces over centuries.
This really highlights the importance of understanding historical context.
Yeah.
Now, where does this leave us with B.R. Ambedkar, a key figure in India's fight for social justice? Does this book align with or challenge his views?
Well, the book acknowledges Ambedkar's powerful critique of the caste system as it existed during his time.
It recognizes the validity of his points about caste hindering social mobility, preventing the full utilization of individual talents, and perpetuating inequality.
So there's common ground when it comes to recognizing the injustices of the caste system as it evolved.
Absolutely. However, what's interesting is that the book also highlights Ambedkar's rejection of the idea that castes represent separate races, something that challenges certain contemporary narratives.
It sounds like the book encourages a more nuanced understanding of Ambedkar's legacy.
Definitely. It invites us to engage with the full spectrum of his thought, even the parts that might be considered controversial today.
That's a refreshing approach. Now, I'm sure many of our viewers are familiar with the common myths and misconceptions about the caste system. Does this book address those head-on?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It dismantles them one by one, using historical evidence and insightful analysis to debunk those oversimplifications.
Okay.
For instance, one of the biggest myths is that Hinduism is inseparable from caste.
Right. That's a common one. What does the book say about that? Well, it argues that caste is a social phenomenon, not something inherent to Hinduism.
Okay.
After all, we see similar social hierarchies in other cultures and religions too.
Right.
The book even cites examples of non-Hindu communities in India practicing caste and Hindu figures who transcended caste barriers.
It's like saying you can't blame a religion for the complex social problems that have developed over time.
Exactly. Another myth it tackles is the idea that caste is solely responsible for India's challenges and requires foreign intervention.
That sounds a bit like a colonial savior narrative, doesn't it?
Exactly. The book pushes back against that by highlighting India's rich history of prosperity and the fact that many solutions to caste-based discrimination have come from within Indian society itself. It's about reclaiming agency and recognizing internal solutions.
That's so important.
Yeah.
So what other myths does it debunk?
Well, there's the belief that the caste system was designed to exploit Dalits.
That's a serious accusation. How does the book address that?
It contrasts the caste system with the widespread practice of slavery in other civilizations, arguing that the Varna ashrama system in its true form aimed for mutual contribution and interdependence, not exploitation.
So it's about looking at the intended purpose rather than just focusing on the negative outcomes that arose later.
Precisely. And it also challenges the misconception that the caste system is inherently violent.
Okay.
The book points to the relative social harmony in pre-colonial India, despite its incredible diversity.
Which suggests that diversity doesn't automatically lead to conflict.
Exactly. Finally, it addresses the myth that only upper castes held power and wealth.
Okay.
It cites examples of Shudra kings and the limitations placed on Brahmin wealth accumulation, showing that the reality was much more complex.
It's amazing how this book systematically dismantles these oversimplified narratives. It really encourages us to think critically and challenge what we think we know. Now, the book also delves into the concept of sustainability, contrasting the Vedic approach with the dominant Western model. What are some of the key differences it highlights?
It suggests that the Vedic model emphasizes harmony with nature and transcending material desires.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything and living in a way that respects the natural order.
So it's more than just recycling and reducing our carbon footprint.
Right. It's a much deeper philosophical approach to living sustainably.
Yeah.
In contrast, the Western model often focuses on manipulating nature to satisfy our, ever-growing appetite for consumption.
It's almost like we're trying to bend the world to our will instead of adapting to its rhythms and limitations.
That's a great way to put it. And the book connects this back to its overall argument, suggesting that the Vedic social structures, when understood in their true form, might offer valuable insights for building a more sustainable and equitable society.
That's a powerful thought. It suggests that we might need to look to the past for inspiration as we grapple with the challenges of the future.
For sure. You know, one of the things that really struck me was how the book celebrates India's diversity. It goes beyond just those surface level differences like language or clothing, and really dives into the diversity of worldviews, skills and even roles within society.
You're right. It emphasizes how India's diversity extends to all those different ways of thinking, being, and contributing to the world. It even challenges the melting pot ideal that's often presented as the ultimate goal.
Exactly. It suggests that striving for homogeneity can actually lead to less diversity in the long run.
Yep.
Like trying to force everyone to wear the same uniform, even though we all come in different shapes and sizes.
That's such a great analogy. The book seems to suggest that true diversity comes from embracing all those unique threads and allowing them to coexist and thrive, creating a more vibrant tapestry.
I love that image. And it connects beautifully with the Vedic idea that individual identity is a source of strength.
Okay.
Which is a bit different from the Western emphasis on individualism.
So it's not about separating yourself from the community, but about finding your place within it and contributing your unique talents and perspectives.
Precisely. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of the book.
Okay.
Its exploration of the Jajmani system.
Jajmani. Now, that's not a term we hear every day. Can you refresh our memory on what that was all about?
Think of it as this traditional system of interdependence within Indian villages.
Okay.
It involved a network of relationships between different jatis, each with their specialized skills and services. Imagine a farmer relying on a blacksmith for tools, a weaver for cloth, and a potter for storage jars. They'd exchange these services, creating a web of mutual support.
So it was like a barter system, but with more social layers and a sense of community built into it.
Exactly. The book explains how it functioned as a kind of informal social safety net, where those with resources would provide for those who provided essential services. It was a localized system that promoted a sense of interconnectedness and shared responsibility.
It sounds like a fascinating model, but of course no system is perfect. Did the book address any potential downsides to the Jajmani system?
It did. It acknowledges that there was always a risk of exploitation, especially given the power dynamics between landowners and those who depended on them for their livelihood.
Right. It's important to recognize that even well-intentioned systems can be vulnerable to abuse, especially when there are imbalances of power.
And the book doesn't shy away from these complexities. In fact, it connects the Jajmani system to its critique of colonialism.
So I'm curious to hear more about that connection.
Well, the book suggests that British policies, with their emphasis on centralized control and a market-driven economy, disrupted the traditional interdependence of the Jajmani system.
So instead of respecting those existing structures and adapting to them, they imposed a top-down model that undermined those organic bottom-up systems that had developed over centuries.
That's a great way to put it. And it brings us back to the theme of sustainability we discussed earlier.
Okay.
The book seems to suggest that the dismantling of traditional structures, combined with the Western emphasis on limitless consumption, created many of the problems we see today, both in India and globally.
It makes you wonder if there are valuable lessons we can learn from these traditional systems. As we search for solutions to modern challenges like climate change inequality and the erosion of community.
Absolutely. It's not about romanticizing the past or going back in time. It's about recognizing the wisdom that might be embedded in these systems and seeing if we can apply those insights to create a more sustainable and just future.
That's a powerful thought. The book challenges us to not just look back at history, but to learn from it and use those lessons to inform our present and our future. Now, there's one more concept from the book that really got me thinking.
Okay.
It's the idea that the caste system was in part a way to manage resources and power. And it raises a really important question. If that system is truly gone, what new systems are emerging to address those same challenges in India and around the world?
That's a brilliant point. And honestly, the book doesn't give us any easy answers. It leaves us wrestling with that question, encouraging us to think deeply about the systems we create and whether they truly serve humanity's needs.
It's a reminder that we are all participants in shaping those systems. And we have a responsibility to ensure that they promote justice, equity, and sustainability.
Exactly. It's not just about observing these patterns, but about actively engaging with them and working to create systems that are truly beneficial for all.
As we've been diving into this book, it's made me realize how much it aligns with what we're trying to do here at Book Reviews One.
I agree. It's all about exploring different viewpoints.
Yeah.
And challenging those hidden assumptions we might not even realize we're carrying.
Right. It's like shining a light on those blind spots and saying, hey, let's look at this from another angle. And this book does that so brilliantly, especially when it comes to these big conversations we're having today about social justice, equity, and the future of our planet.
It provides this whole new framework for understanding those complex issues. It's like it gives you a new pair of glasses to see the world with.
I love that analogy. And speaking of seeing things differently, one of the biggest takeaways for me is the book's emphasis on historical context. It's so easy to judge the past based on our current values.
It is. But this book reminds us that societies are constantly evolving. Ideas shift. And to truly understand where we are today, we need to understand the historical forces that shaped us.
It's a call to be more empathetic toward the past, right? Not to condone everything, but to try and understand the why behind it.
Exactly. And it also challenges us to be more self-aware, to examine our own biases and assumptions, even as we critique the systems of the past.
It's like it's saying, hey, before you point fingers, take a look in the mirror. Now, there was one part of the book that I found particularly thought-provoking. It was the discussion of B.R. Ambedkar's rejection of Islam and Christianity.
Yes. It's not something you hear discussed very often, especially in Western circles.
Almost like a taboo subject. But the book presents Ambedkar's views with a lot of respect and honesty, even though they might challenge some contemporary narratives.
It's about engaging with the full complexity of a historical figure, right? Not trying to fit them into a neat little box that suits our current agenda.
Exactly. So for those who might not be familiar with Ambedkar's story, can you tell us a bit about why he ultimately chose Buddhism?
Well, the book explains that Ambedkar saw in Buddhism a path to liberation that wasn't bound by external authority or dogma.
Okay.
He was drawn to its emphasis on individual transformation and its potential to create a more just and equitable society.
So for him, it wasn't just a personal spiritual choice. It was a social and political one as well.
Precisely. And, this ties back to the idea of sustainability that we've been discussing. The book seems to suggest that real sustainability isn't just about finding technological solutions. It's about a deeper transformation of our values and priorities.
It's about shifting away from that constant pursuit of more stuff and toward a way of life that's more in harmony with ourselves, with each other, and with the planet.
Absolutely. And I think that message resonates so deeply with a lot of people today, especially those who are feeling disillusioned with the state of the world.
It's like we're searching for a new way of being, a way of living that's more meaningful and fulfilling.
And this book suggests that we might find inspiration for that new way of being in some of these ancient wisdom traditions that have been overlooked or dismissed by Western thought.
It's about rediscovering those lost voices, those alternative ways of seeing the world.
And that's what we're all about here at Book Reviews One. We want to introduce our viewers to books that challenge their assumptions, expand their horizons, and inspire them to think differently about the world.
It's about igniting that spark of curiosity, encouraging people to question, to explore, and to engage in those difficult but necessary conversations.
Because ultimately, those conversations, those exchanges of ideas, are what will lead to a better future for all of us.
Well said. So for our viewers who are ready to embark on that journey of discovery, we highly recommend checking out Varna Jati Caste, a primer on Indian social structures. It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish the last page.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you? What challenged your assumptions? What new insights did you gain? Head over to the comment section on our YouTube channel, Book Reviews One, and let's continue this conversation.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating books. Thanks for joining us on this intellectual adventure, and we'll see you next time.